How's it going? You're listening to Born Optimistic. I'm here with Kevin Murphy. Kevin, thank you so much for being here.
My pleasure entirely.
Kevin, where do you sit on the optimism spectrum?
Unfortunately, I'm well up the optimism spectrum, which means I'm constantly disappointed. But yeah, that's where when I was younger, funnily enough, I was probably a sunnier person, and I used to think, well, everything is going to turn out really badly. So if anything did turn out well, I was so happy. But then I shifted at some stage, and I thought, no, there is room for a lot of optimism, and then things turn out shit, and look at me.
So you were happier as a pessimist?
I was, exactly. That's exactly what it was, yeah.
Wow.
Because everything turns out better than you expect.
That's true. I mean, I never expect, I'm an optimist, but I never expect things to go, all the way. I always kind of reach for the stars, but I never expect to get there.
Yeah, I suppose, yeah, you just have to aim that way. Otherwise, nothing's going to happen, I suppose.
Yeah. Is it possible to be a productive pessimist?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't think pessimists or optimists wallow in the fact that they're pessimists and optimists all the time. So I guess they have to get there. They have to pay the rent and eat food. So they just get on with things. And then, but this in the background, there's this, I don't know, it's early in the morning and I'm just making this up now. But
I remember a time when, there was a few years when I didn't do as much as I normally do. And one of the reasons for that was I'd think of something, and then I would think of all, I'd go steps ahead, steps ahead, steps ahead, steps ahead, steps ahead, steps ahead, steps ahead. And then I'd get to the point where it all goes to shit. So then I wouldn't even bother starting it.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, yeah, I definitely don't. For me, so I think of something that I want to do, and I'm a nervous person by nature, but you dive in and you expect things will go badly, and I'm always then, and I'm completely doing an about turn here. I suppose my disappointment with life is to do more with what I see around me, with the political system and all that kind of crap. With regards to me, myself, and my own productivity, I'm amazed that I try something and unbelievably it works. So in that way, I'm not. I am a pessimist, but I've trained myself to just dive in, and good things happen. That's what I find in music and other things. Anyway,
I can totally relate to the disappointment of everything else around one. I don't consider myself a religious person, but the one prayer that I would place any store in is what we in Ireland call the alcoholic's prayer.
Which is what?
Which is grant me.
Oh, that one I know. That the wisdom to accept something.
Yeah, to accept the things I can't change.
Yeah.
To change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference.
Yeah.
So that whole notion of what's within your control and what's outside your control, and you look at the environment, you look at our politicians, you look at all this stuff. Yeah, where's the care factor? But I think parenthood is a great cure for that, because it doesn't matter what you think. You've only so much time or so little time anyway.
Yeah. How do we mean with parenting?
Well, before I was a parent, I had a lot more free time.
Oh, yeah, Jesus, yeah.
And a lot more free time to care about things and to do stuff about things. And now I still care about things, but I've less time to do stuff about it.
Yeah.
So it kind of forces you to prioritise what it is you really care about.
That's true too. Yeah, there's not room for... Would you be more pessimistic if you didn't have kids? Because you'd have to think about these things a lot more, because you'd have a lot more free time to think about it. Yeah.
And then you force yourself to be optimistic, to rationalise the fact that you've brought these creatures into this shit world.
I want to strangle them so many times I couldn't care less about that. It's like fucking sink or swim here. That I've never... So people say that I've never thought that once, actually, yeah. I'm sure I'm going to get it. I didn't ask to be born, but I'll deal with that when I come along.
I've had that, yeah.
Right, okay.
It's ahead of you.
I mean, the only thing I do think, whatever the general is the political system, blah, 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 environment, is climate change. And that's my one genuine worry. No matter what, they could be facing a really unpleasant situation in 50 years' time.
Yeah, and in terms of like how easy our kids' generation have it, and how well this is kind of ahead of you in terms of how little they seem to be able to do for themselves, blah blah blah. Like the challenges that could be in daily life in 30 years' time, in 40 years' time, the very act of a day could be so different to our days now.
Yeah.
The type of shite you may need to go through to eat.
Yeah. It's true. So I definitely worry about that, yeah. For sure.
But then you look at a political system that seems absolutely incapable of long-term thinking.
Yeah, that's the way it is. I mean, who knows? Maybe something dramatic is going to be pulled out of the bag in the next couple of days. Things do seem to have changed in the last, since though that report came out about the coming down from 2% increase in temperature to the 1.5, which is far more stark and has to be done by more like 2030. We might see something in the next 10 years, but I wouldn't be holding my breath either.
And is it fair to say, so when you talk about doing things and think about doing things and the things that drive you, it's music?
Really, it is now, yeah. I mean, I kind of packed it up for, I didn't pack up writing music, but I sort of packed up music for about 10 years. To go back to college, and then I went on to the whole way through. I was terrified to leave college, even though I was like in my mid-30s, I didn't want to go anywhere. So I ended up doing a PhD, and then I ended up teaching in that area and researching.
What did you study?
I did social policy and sociology and some politics then earlier. And my PhD is in sustainable development, climate change and political systems. So so I did that, and that took a long time, and it took a lot of focus and energy. So pretty much the day that was done, I started again, and I've become pretty much immersed in music more than anything again since.
And you had to get away from it.
Well, it's just I'd have to think now. But I mean, for one, there was just very little time I had to get all this work done.
No, but you had to get away from what you studied. As soon as you finished studying.
Yeah, I don't know. There was just a little bit more room for music, so I was just in like Flynn again. I can't really remember what the thought process was, but I wanted to do something probably a bit more self-indulgent. And I found that was a way better thing for me than trying to write particular songs for a long, long time and not having, or even when I did achieve writing the kind of songs that I thought I wanted, I didn't really want them when I heard it and said, what am I going to do that? And I set up a band and oh God, I couldn't be arsed. But I just focused more on the cello. I started this band, Seti the First, with Thomas Hall. It was all instrumental stuff, and I really didn't think anybody was going to pay a blind bit of notice to it. And the album was extremely well received. And you were talking about Afterclang got behind it, and we're playing it. For example, John Kelly was playing it all the time, and it was a pure indulgent thing. There was no thought about how this will be received or anything. And then it's like, oh well, this is grand, so I'll just do whatever I want from here on in. And they said the First was going well for a while. It's kind of on hold now. And then Slow Moving Clouds, that's the band I'm focusing on most at the moment. And now I am back to writing songs again, but they're voice and cello. It's all voice and cello. So I have an album that's pretty much done now. Just has another few weeks and it'll be mixed.
So are you finding that the more you do what you want, the better things go?
Yeah, as it turns out, yeah. I mean, I'm telling my kids the exact opposite of that all the time. You can't just do what you want. You just do what I want. But, so I'm the record company and they're the artist in this scenario, but they'll learn not to listen to me after a while.
So it's like, so far getting two acts in your music life. Whatever started, when you were really, I'm like, when did you first touch an instrument? When did that kind of become a thing that you were really interested in?
Well, we were kind of a musical family, but classical and some trad. So, I mean, I would have been hitting the piano in some shape or form, hitting notes, do, re, mi, when I was 5 or something. And the 2 girls now that I have are doing the same. I'm not going to force them, really, that I think it's a good idea, but the piano is there, and sometimes they ask me, and they are going to lessons. But yeah, I was 5, so yeah, there was always music in the house.
And what were your parents, were musicians? Or?
My mother came from a musical background as well. She didn't really play when we were kids. So, with the usual thing, we went to the School of Music in Cork. We did all the Fesh Matthews there, and went to the Cork Youth Orchestra. I was given the cello as an eeny, meeny, miny, mo situation. She had a few instruments. I got that, and I really, really hated it. For the maybe 6 or 7 years I learnt it. It was a particularly uncool instrument for like an 11-year-old boy in Cork City to have that time. What can you do with that? Nothing. So.
How did your mother keep you into it? I can't.
She didn't. I left then when I was about 12. And eventually the cello teacher begged her to stop bringing me. Because, I'd done nothing. I hated it. So I only really took it up again when I was about 18, I'd say, 17 or 18.
What brought you back to it?
I was in that band Interference, and it was just to do something different in the band. I was the bass player, but just to bring an extra element to it. And I realised, whereas it was extremely unpopular when I was 11, that certainly with girls and things like that, it was extremely popular. All you had to do was carry it around, in fact, and you were in a good place already. If you could string a couple of notes together, So that as a motivation kept me going. And then I just joined lots of other bands just purely to keep practicing. I did a lot of trad stuff and old-timey stuff for no other reason, but people were, the opportunity was there. So that I kind of self-learned, really. I didn't really learn when I was a kid. I got to grade 4 or something, which your average, 10-year-old would get to. How
did you end up joining Interference?
That's odd one, actually. Fergus O'Farrell and James O'Leary were in Clongowes with college together, and my younger brother Bernard was there, and he was in Interference before I was in Interference playing the fiddle. And I met Ferg, and I had another band, and he did a demo with that band, blah blah blah. He came down to do one. So I met him. Then he was heading off to Dublin with Interference, and I had just finished the Leaving, and I wanted out of where I was. And
so this was in Cork?
This was in Cork, yeah.
Oh, wow.
And I decided, fuck it, I'm going to Dublin. They had TV appearances and everything, and I thought, all right, this will happen fairly quickly, and so I'll be in. So I learnt the bass immediately because they needed a bass player. Because their existing bass player was one of my best friends at the time. So, but he was getting the chop, and I had to do an audition.
What was the politics of that like? Did you know he was getting the chop before he did?
Oh yeah. So I had to then tell him, which because he heard they had a new fucking bass player, and then I tell him I am the new bass player.
How did that go?
Not well initially. I know he was grand. He's over still buddies today. Yeah,
that's good.
He still plays the bass as well. A band called The Shed in Cork. So that's how, and then I moved up to Dublin with Interference.
Did you all live in the shoe factory or just rehearse there?
We all lived there for about 2 years, not all of us. Ferg, myself, Morris Culligan. Who else lived there now? Richard Levis, who wrote a couple of Interference tunes with Ferg actually. And it was the 4 of us essentially, and then people moved in and out. A few people moved in and out.
Seems like it was a pretty crazy place.
Yeah, it seemed completely normal at the time. But yeah, in retrospect, I mean, things like that don't really happen anymore. There's probably all sorts of health and safety issues around if the council found out what was going on inside there. I mean, the shoe factory, the Winstanley Shoe Factory on Back Lane, I mean, it takes up the whole lane. It's absolutely massive. I mean, I still have dreams about it and other places, mainly the whole... I mean, I got to learn off the geography of every single room in the place. You know, the place was littered, huge rooms, and they were littered with old machinery for making shoes and these kind of things. And we lived in a tiny, tiny part of it, but we did rehearse down in the factory, all right. So yeah, I mean, the first 6 months there, I'd say I went to bed terrified every night that we were going to be slaughtered in our beds. We were broken into a few times. There was one time a gang tried to burn their way through one of the gates, because it had lots of different gates. We were armed with golf clubs. We had no phone or anything like that. We just thought, all right, here we go. At least we'll take a couple of them with us if it comes to that.
They tried to burn their way in.
Well, they tried to burn their way in, yeah. Well, they set a fire at one of the doors, just inside one of the doors downstairs, which had another locked door in front of it. So what exactly there, what we didn't go down to exactly ask, but it looked like they were trying to burn their way in anyway. So it was fairly wild, I suppose, yeah. But I mean, it was a really good place for learning music because we played music all the time. And so certainly my skills as a musician would have come on considerably, just simply from playing with whoever was there. So, yeah, an interesting place to live, all right.
A lot of people come and go.
Yeah, a lot of musicians and ne'er-do-wells, dodgy types.
Have you seen the documentary about Ferg yet?
I haven't seen it, no.
I've only seen the trailer, which looks out of this world.
Mm-hmm.
I've heard the doc is fabulous.
Yeah, well, it won the Galway Film, or the Documentary Award or something, I think.
Did it?
It did, yeah.
Can't wait to see it. Fair play to Michael, so many years. So when did you get to the point then where you were like, shag this, I'm going to college? Like, what happened in between?
Interference finished up. Well, I left Interference.
And you were in all sorts of bands then. I remember I'd beat you, and every time I beat you, you'd be playing with a different
I was a kind of a session musician, yeah. So yeah, no, I did that a lot, yeah. I had to do for money, basically, mainly anyway. So yeah, I was playing with all sorts of bands, and then I had my own band, well, with Cian Roach and Barnes Goulding, called Igloo, and that seemed to be doing really well. And then it was one of these, like, how many times this happens, like every record company in the world is queuing up, and then just one day they stopped coming to the gigs, and we never really found out why. And we hadn't really written songs in a while, so that came to an end. I think it's after that I decided, screw this.
So were you pretty disenchanted and disheartened at this point?
Yeah, well, I thought, well, that's that really. I think I really need to do something else just to take the focus off what it is I'm doing all the time. And I started studying, I think, and I started working in a couple of NGOs, and immediately I loved it. So, and then while I was in college, I was working with Simon Community, but in the end I didn't really want to get into either of those things. And I'm not really like a Green Party type, but climate change in particular started occupying more and more of my thinking. You know who Gavin Hart is. I remember him talking about climate change, and I thought, nonsense, complete nonsense.
Gavin was a shoe factory regular.
He wasn't. No, he didn't.
He was in the house.
He would have come up. He was in Cork at that time, but he would have come up a couple of times. He lived in Ferg. Subsequently, moved into a house which was attached to Winstanley, and he lived there.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, no, I do remember hearing, and it just seemed completely implausible to me. At the time, people were talking about peak oil as well. That seems to have kind of slightly floated off the agenda. But it seemed ridiculous to me that, energy companies would know this and would be doing nothing about it. And then the more you think about it, there are people who are simply interested in profit. And not longer term, because some of them will be dead in 20 years, and so why would they give a shit? And so then I read more about climate change, and I realised, the vast bulk of scientists were backing this. So that's why I went along that route.
Isn't it crazy how much we've known and how long we've known it for?
Yeah. It's been a real study in, psychology of people and how they receive bad news, I suppose. They don't want to receive bad news. Everybody is fighting what they think is the good fight, and this is what we have to do. Change our lifestyles. I don't want to change my lifestyle. I like my car, and I like this, and I like that. And anyway, they look like weirdos, and they're always giving out about things, the Greens and all that kind of stuff. So probably had a bit of that going on myself. So I assume, a lot of this is radical fucking horseshit, and people don't want to. Culturally, I saw that there was a thing outside the Dáil there recently. People glued themselves outside the Dáil. They were protesting about something to do with the environment. This was a fairly noble thing to do. And then I was looking at the tweets. All the tweets were exceptionally negative. It's like, look at the state of them. I'd say they'd be great cracking a night out or whatever. So there seems to be a real, anyone who's flying the green flag to a certain extent is seen as a bit of a fucking head job. and to be pitied, and they're no crack, and it's, oh God, they all want us to eat grass and leaves and this kind of nonsense. So the message does seem to have it seems to be tainted in that way to a certain extent.
But one thing I'm amazed at is how rapidly the whole vegan thing has grown, and kind of, I didn't see that coming.
Yeah.
Didn't see that coming.
Yeah.
And it's just huge, and that gives me hope.
Yeah, it's huge, but I don't know what the stats are. Maybe like 20 years ago, 0.5% of the population were vegan. Maybe they're like 10% now or something. There's still the other 90 to go, I guess, including me now. I'll do it when... My thing on this is the whole... I'm really, really, really rabidly anti the whole, you can do it, you can make a difference. That's grand a little further down the line, but all the structural stuff has to come into place first, and that's all being ignored. And of course the government is trying to put the blame on the individuals and avoiding their own responsibility completely. And I'm sorry, but the individual can do fuck all, basically, in real terms, to change anything. It has to be all big structural stuff that has to change.
Absolutely.
And we have to be made do it. I mean, I'm getting a little bit better on the personal responsibility stuff, but you don't need to make legislation and law for people who are already committed, that tiny little minority who are already committed. You need to make it for people who are not really going to.
Well, simple legislation can make so much difference, but I think, again, even in the last few years, I think climate change has gone from being a fringe concern. I think we're almost at tipping point, and I think the more people talk about it, and the more people like Greta Thunberg get coverage, but it all is moving so slowly. And sometimes I look at activists, politicians, Green politicians, and I think they're too patient.
The Irish Green Party, I mean, even though I said I wasn't a Green Party person, I actually did vote for them until they got into government, and now I don't vote for them anymore.
Well, Saoirse McHugh brought me back to them.
Yeah, well, I'm kind of begrudgingly having a look, reassessing my options again. But they were just so weak, and they're just trying to be nice, and it's like they have to, this is serious, and stop trying to make it look like, we're politicians too Fianna Fáil or Fine Gael, and we can play the game. These people, unfortunately, are the enemy because they're middle of the road and they don't want to see radical change. We need radical change, and the Green Party should get very angry about it and not unapologetic about that anger.
That's what upsets me with the Green Party. It's like there's this franchise called being eco-aware, and they've accepted that mantle, but they're not it. They're not enough. So it's like, I vote for Green, I care about the planet. But you're not actually voting for people who are going to do enough.
That's my problem. What do you do with your vote to make it count? Because, the system, the electoral system can be a very potent weapon. But, yeah. But
there are people that are different. Grace O'Sullivan as well, I think is definitely different. Mm-hmm. She's cut from a different cloth. The two people, Grace and Saoirse, aren't classic politicians by any means. But Grace really believes in the political system and how it can make a difference. Sometimes I'm looking at that and going, really? Do you really think it's going to make a difference? And she does.
Yeah, well, something is happening. It depends on who the people you get in there to populate the Dáil, I guess, or in any government. But then it'll work. You've got the right people in there. But it's very difficult to... or else radically change the minds of the people that are there at the moment. Their minds are being changed. You're right, there is maybe a tipping point in the way, I'm not too sure.
But this world that you immerse yourself in through studying it and doing your PhD and everything, you left it for music again. Why? What was it?
Oh, well, I still that's...
You're still in the world.
I am, yeah. No, I'm a lecturer in, he was formerly the Institute of Technology in Blanchardstown. Now it's...
TU.
It's TU Dublin. And
what do you lecture
in social policy, sociology, sustainable development, and then research methods. So just teach them how to research.
So you just kept it full of both worlds. Okay.
Yeah, and I like that. I have to say, we at the moment there's not a huge onus on us to research, although that's probably changing with the technological university. But we have a lot of teaching, and to be honest, I love the teaching. I hate correcting and I hate the admin stuff, I really do, but the teaching is brilliant. I love that. So yeah, and it affords room for the music as well. Well, I have a very patient wife also, so.
She gives you the time.
Yeah, well, I mean, we divvy it up as much as possible so that I mean, most evenings I'm either working at home or I'm rehearsing with one of the bands that I'm in.
So there's more than Summer of the Clouds.
Well, there's my own thing. I'm just going to, I don't have a name yet. I'm not really too sure what I'm going to do. There's only a band
This
name.
is the new thing you've written. You start writing songs.
Yeah, this is recorded. It's ready to go. And maybe I'll I may have a gig in Safe Harbour. We're just waiting to confirm.
But it's definitely not Summer of the Clouds, this new material.
Oh, it's very different. It's very different. They're songs and it's just voice and cello.
Because Summer of the Clouds, like one of my favourite trad tunes of all time, possibly, is The Ash Plant.
Oh, right, okay.
Which you did on your album last year. Now, your version is radically different from other versions.
Right, okay.
I would have heard of it. But the tune is still there. But your love, this is going back to when you were very young as well. Your love of trad hasn't left you.
No, it hasn't. I mean, again, because we inhabit a strange space now because some trad people really like us and some trad people see it as nonsense. Our last little player, Danny Diamond, he came from a real trad background, they immersed in it as kids and part of and culturally, and going around the country meeting other trad families, there just is a real scene there. And the same with our new fiddle player, Ulton, is far more grounded in the tradition. But when we were kids, we played trad. My dad bought instruments. We knew how to play music, so there was mandolins, banjos, and a lot of my brothers and sisters were fiddle players. So we were self-taught, really. So we weren't in, and my background is not that kind of background.
But you know the tunes.
I know, for sure, yeah, and we used to play them all the time, and I always loved it. And
but that's what trad is the canon of tunes. That's
yeah,
trad.
no, exactly. Yeah, what is trad and what isn't trad? The amount of times I've nearly been strangled, or strangled mainly Aki, the nickel harper player in our band, and because we're constantly having existential crisis about what are we. And I'm delighted. I keep on telling him, just because we're having these conversations is a good thing. It shows that we're really hard to pigeonhole, which is exactly what I'm after. And he's constantly saying that's not what I'm after. I want it to be one thing or the other, and we're constantly fighting over that. But we're still.
What's the nature of these fights? How serious do they get?
Well, I mean, we've 2 albums done now. We're on our 3rd one, so they'd be fairly heating up at the moment. What kind of material are we moving on? Are we staying where we were? Where were we anyway in the first place? Or why would we want to be doing that? For me, I have to say either I'm a complete ignoramus or not. But it's just turn up, pick up the instrument, and see what happens. That the progression naturally happens unless we all start playing, reggae or something like that. Then we have all right, there's something going on here. Maybe we need to look at it, but I think it just happens naturally. But for me, this whole, are they traditional, are they not? Well, I mean, we're definitely not traditional, but it's based on traditional tunes a lot of the time. There's a term post-folk, which we've been looking at, and we, at least according to the definition, we appear to be under that. And these are the kind of things. Are we post-folk? Are we not post-folk? Are we post-folk? So, I mean, and most people don't give a bollocks. Like, I was going to go to them, but they're post-folk, so I can't go to them. If they were folk, or post something else. But, yeah. For me, it's a sign, it's a good sign, because we're unpigeonholable. And, for example, there's an agent in the UK, they're a brilliant agent, Serious Music, they're called, they put on amazing stuff. And he signed us up on the basis that it's odd and it doesn't really fit, and that's what he does, and he does very well out of it. So yeah, there's definitely what to me it's just, I mean, when I was playing trad, when I was playing cello, playing trad, after a while I ended up being a bass player almost. I was eventually getting a pain in my arse from that. This is dull now. So I was always trying to find new ways of making the cello a bit more exciting, because playing fast tunes on the cello sounds ridiculous as well. I think some people can do it better. Just one Natalie Haas does it really well, I think, but generally I can't make it sound good anyway.
You're not into it.
So I'm not into it anyway, and I don't think it sounds particularly good. Swimming Clouds at one stage I wrote most of an album, a cello album, a trad cello album. Nobody's ever heard this, probably thanks be to God. And I did like 3-part cello backing to it. It was generally mid tempo tunes and slow airs. And I mean, it sounded mental. It sounded really, really dark. Obviously, with 4 cellos now playing. And I thought it was a bit too intense. So I kind of left it. But at the same time, I was kind of having to think, geez, that's a bit out there, but it might. And then Slowing Clouds is kind of, for me, for what I want out of it, is a way of doing. I mean, I suppose probably the most liberating force I've heard would be Martin Hayes and Dennis Cahill. Dennis Cahill hugely as well in that. It's like, oh right, okay, that sounds amazing. That's suddenly, it's not, things aren't predictable. I just found there's formulaic backing in trad sometimes, which was starting to turn me off a bit. And as you turn a corner, you can often tell what's coming around the corner. But with Dennis Cahill, you couldn't like.
He's not afraid of doing less.
Yeah, there's that too. Yeah.
He's just so sparse sometimes.
Yeah. And it just is incredibly sympathetic to the tune. And that was one of the things about slowing the tune down when I had to for the cello thing, is you suddenly hear there's so much music in there that often people aren't hearing because it's a fucking race to the finish. People are playing so fast, and I can't. It's like 10-minute heavy metal solos, not hearing an awful lot of music sometimes. So yeah, slow things down a little bit and have a blank template with regards to what you can do behind a tune.
So in terms of the concept of trad, like, would you even know who wrote the Ash Plant?
No, I would have been told that recently.
But is that kind of part of the point of it? That it's music just thrown into this communal pool.
Mm-hmm.
Like Liz Carroll, the fiddle player, has sat in sessions where people have started playing tunes that she wrote and not been aware of the fact that they were playing with the person who wrote it.
Right, okay.
And she loved that fact.
Yeah.
That it's not about ego.
Yeah.
It's just the music is just thrown into this pool.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, I haven't really thought about... Again, Danny, when he was in the band, he was very interested in that side of it, I guess. To me, there's just a lot of really good tunes, and that's... and I suppose there is a little, for me, a buzz that there are tunes and that we're Irish, and I really want to be doing something like that as part of what I'm doing.
Tell me about the world of songs from Safe Harbour and people and this community that you're part of.
Well, we're very, very, very lucky to be part of it, and it's mainly down to Mary Hickson, who is the primary mover, I guess, in songs from A Safe Harbour, who's a big Song Moving Clouds fan. So she got us involved, I guess. I mean, I suppose first the broader picture is the people thing, so just to talk about that briefly. People is a really difficult thing to define anyway, for sure. But I suppose there's a core group. The 2 Desner brothers from the National are in that. The Bon Iver guy, I should know all this. Justin Vernon. Mary Hickson is part of the core group, and there's a few more. So it involves these festivals around the world that happen maybe 2 to 3 times a year. There's been 2 in Berlin. There's the Eau Claire festivals, and there's probably been 3 or 4 of those. And there's a few more, but there's one in Cork, and this is the 3rd time it'll have been in Cork. And it's in Cork because Mary Hickson's from Cork, I guess. And so you get they're all different really, but they're unusual. But I'm trying to think what's the common element between them all. I mean, there's a lot of collaborations going on. People arrive in a particular place, in this case Cork, and they're matched up with other people, and the job is to produce an act that within 3 or 4 days that then the public will come to see. It's not really a long-standing band or anything. It's something that I guess they're working behind the scenes before they come to Cork. To a certain extent, the material is at least half developed, and then they bring it all together, let's say in Cork in this case. And then so there'll be lots of special projects that are played by like really, really amazing musicians around the world. The last, probably the biggest of them all, was in Berlin last year, and we were there for a week, and it was in the Funkhaus, which is this old communication centre. It was I think the Stasi used to, I don't know if they hardly ran it, but they pretty much had every room in the place bugged. It was like the BBC for East Germany, an absolutely phenomenal place. They had to make it better than the BBC just for propaganda's sake. So every single thing about it has been thought out to be better than the BBC. So it was the ultimate broadcast house in Europe for whatever 30 or 40 years, and it's an incredible place. And so we all got up in the morning. We were bussed out to this place and given orders. You have to go in there and work with this person, come up with whatever. You have a gig on Friday or whatever. Friday, Saturday, Sunday. I think it was only 2 days actually, Saturday and Sunday. The festival was on Saturday and Sunday. People were brought into the festival. There was 5,000 people each day, so it was 10,000 people in total. It was sold out. They didn't know what they were getting. They were put into different groups and they were brought to rooms, and you just don't know who's going to be there. It could be that Bon Iver is there, or it could be that I'm there. Of course, if it was you, you'd be delighted that I'm there. And
did you see the look of disappointment in people's faces as you took the stage?
They were so happy. It was mental, yeah. It was absolutely incredible.
How does that work as a gig? So it's trying to rewire how the whole bit of music and people works, I suppose, or music and audiences, or
yes, it is. I guess, yeah. I mean, I suppose what people like the Desner brothers and Justin Vernon are trying to achieve to a certain extent is just trying to, in some way, I don't know, just at least temporarily dismantle the norms that are attached to their rock and roll lives, which is, the band is this huge hierarchy, and I am whoever I am, and there's 30,000 people come to see me, and but in the end of the day, we have an hour's work to do at night, and it's playing the same songs we've fucking played for the last 10 years, and I think it was doing all their heads in. So this is, it's just mixing it up as much as possible. They form little bands with people who are like unbelievable musicians. Now I have to say that, I was absolutely blown away by the quality of, I guess in some cases, session musicians, or they all have their own projects, that's, I don't know, it's a model. I don't know if you could transfer it to the whole world all the time, because how many people really want to go to a festival and not know what they're going to be exposed to?
That's a great filter to start with, I suppose. The people who are adventurous are the ones who take that leap.
I would do it, but I'd be very nervous as a promoter doing it. But at the same time, I think they do it in Eau Claire as well. There's at least a strong element of that. And there will be a certain element of it, I think, in Cork. Well, for example, I don't know what I'm going to be doing, and Mary Hickson never tells you until the very last minute. In Berlin, I ended up playing in 11 gigs in 2 days. And it was full-on nervous breakdown material at the end of it. The very last gig we had to do, we were told in the main place, which holds 3,000 people, which is going to be full of 3,000 people, all expecting, you were going to be playing with the Solomon Clouds will be playing with the Russ and Gano family, and that, by the way, is in an hour and a half. And of course, we all said, well, "What are we playing?" And she said, "Why are you asking me? What are you asking me? What are you playing? You're playing there." So, at that stage, my head was fried, and I just told the rest of them, "I'm going to the fucking bar. You sort it out and tell me what I'm playing when I come back." And I went back, and I was definitely in bits. But yeah, they worked, Aki and I think it was God knows, or one of the other lads worked out something. You'll do this here, blah blah blah. And we had to turn up an hour and a half later in front of 3,000 people, and 1, 2, 3, 4, here we go. This is our show. And it was brilliant. Now, some of them weren't so brilliant, but this was absolutely amazing.
You were brilliant.
Well, yeah. No, I mean, things that we did now on the cuff sometimes may not have been as good, but this was absolutely brilliant, yeah. So it really worked together, the energy of the two things worked, and we found space around each other, and the audience hadn't a fucking clue that we just made this up an hour and a half before. So there's that kind of thing going on.
So adventurous people should be booking their passage to Cork.
Yeah. I mean, if I wasn't playing, I'd definitely go down anyway, because, you know, I'm getting a little older and I'm not really an electric picnic person anymore. And I definitely want to pick and choose little odd things, and maybe some thing that's a rock thing and then something that's a classical thing or something like that. So I'd go anyway. And
it could be a great place for the world debut of your yet as untitled new thing.
Yes, it could be, yeah. I'm looking for. Well, yeah, it could be. That'll come out anyway soon. Either way. So I'm really excited about that now too. I have to say, I really am into singing now again. I love it, and I'm just trying to force myself as much as possible. Voice and cello. You know, you can bring in blah 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 and fill it up. Maybe later weight on, but if I can't, I want to entertain an audience for 1 hour with just that. And if I can, I'm pretty much nearly there now. I think I've done some supports for about a half an hour, and it's gone really well. So if I can get an hour gig out of it, then it's a hard thing to pull off. I think I've been trying for years. Like, I'm not a loop pedal person. I've seen it. I've seen the best people do it, and I don't like it. So I didn't want to go down that route. So it's just to try and make the material as interesting as possible, so that people don't gloss over in the eyes. Because I've seen the loop pedals, and I think it's incredible for about 2 tunes, and then, you know, I can see you've got loop pedals, so, you know, you're not fooling us, kind of thing.
Well, I look forward to seeing you pull that off, Kevin.
Yeah. No pressure, yeah. Yeah.
Thanks a minute for your time.
Well, thank you very much
for making the time to come out. Appreciate it.
Okay.
You've been listening to BornOptimistic. Thanks a million. Until next week. Bye.